Are we recording or are we? Yep. And my sound is good? Everything's good? Yeah, we're all good. Yep, recording in progress. They are now shutting the door.
Welcome to Mind the Game with LeBron James and JJ Redick, brought to you by Uninterrupted and 342 Productions. This is episode 9 of Mind the Game. LeBron and I do a finals preview. Two fantastic teams in the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. I really believe, and I think LeBron does as well, this is going to be an awesome NBA Finals. We have talked about a lot of the concepts that we talk about in this episode in prior episodes, so not much to get into from an X and O standpoint. There is one Boston set that we do spend a lot of time on, and that is Horns 2 or V2. This was a play that I started running when I was on the LA Clippers. A lot of times it would be Jamal Crawford, DeAndre Jordan, and me in the V2 or Horns 2 action. I also ran this a lot when I was on the New Orleans Pelicans. V2, Horns 2, this is how Boston will run it a lot of times. Let's say, again, Horns 2 or V2, this is a 5-out alignment. Ball handler is in the middle. A lot of times this is Derek White. And there's a bunch of different stuff that you can get to out of this. Just show some of the options. Derek White can pass here. A lot of times this is Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum as a screener off the ball, so valuable for the Boston Celtics in creating mismatches, and when they don't switch, creating actions like this. Jayson Tatum setting a rip screen on Derek White. He can either flare for a 3 or he can cut to the basket. Derek White gets this cut probably at least once a game. Another thing they'll run, let's say Jrue Holiday is here, and we'll put Jayson Tatum here and Jaylen Brown here. These three guys, when they get into this triangle up at the top of V2, they get a lot of good stuff out of this. One thing that Jrue is really good at, Jayson as well, is if Jaylen Brown enters to Jayson Tatum, Jrue will set this rip screen, and if a team is switching, he'll set it at an angle where he can immediately slip into space. Now, when Jayson Tatum hits Jrue Holiday on that cut, this could be Derek White on that cut, could be Jayson Tatum on that cut, but when they get this cut, they've now got shooting all around them. A lot of times they'll put X5, they'll put Horford or Porzingis in this right here, and as this defender goes to help on this slip, the pass goes to the corner, you get a wide open 3. They get a lot of stuff out of that rip screen into a slip. Another basic thing they do, if this is, let's say, the 5-man, we'll just say it's Porzingis. Let's just say it's Porzingis over here. Let's say this is Tatum over here. This was how I used to run it. This could be DeAndre Jordan. This could be Derek Favors. This could be Jackson Hayes. The point guard, ball handler, will hit the 5-man. He'll go set a down screen for the shooter or the playmaker, and this guy will come off a little dribble handoff right here. Porzingis, Al Horford rolling into space, DeAndre Jordan rolling into space. That's like a V2 with a dribble handoff. The flare screen I've seen Boston run for Kristaps Porzingis. So Kristaps Porzingis will be up top. He'll hit the wing. He'll get this rip screen and flare into space. Again, that's a 7'3" guy flaring to 27 feet. Good stuff. The other concept out of V2 we talk about, and doesn't really matter who this is, but a lot of times this is the 5-man. Okay? This is Horns Twist. So the ball handler will come. This will be a screen right here. You get the switch and the matchup you want on the primary ball handler. The screener will just clear out of there, and then you're right into this downhill right-hand drive. A lot of the stuff we talk about as it relates to the Dallas Mavericks is about pick and roll coverage versus Luka. Again, we've covered all these concepts before: drop, switch, up to touch, blitz. It'll be interesting to see how the Boston Celtics match up across the board. You probably want to stay out of 2 on the ball, but the numbers, as we talk about in this episode, are pretty surprising when it comes to the most effective way to guard Luka Doncic in pick and roll. A bunch more stuff that we get to on both these teams. Can't wait to call these NBA Finals. This is Mind the Game, Episode 9, NBA Finals preview with LeBron James and JJ Redick. Enjoy.
Brian, what's up, man? How we doing?
Fantastic. Fantastic.
I thought we could just talk NBA Finals, maybe a little preview of what's to come for everybody. We are recording this on Thursday. Tonight is Game 5 of the Western Conference. We are going to talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves, but we are going to go a little bit on the assumption that Minnesota will not be the first team to come back from a 3-0 deficit. Could happen. I'm not saying it couldn't, in which case this whole episode is fucked. It's fucked. To me, there's like different teams, obviously, but there's a little parallel between you and Anthony Edwards. This is his first time making a deep playoff run. He's 22 years old. Your first deep playoff run was at 22 years old. Yeah. You guys got to the finals, ended up losing to San Antonio. What do you sort of remember about that run? What do you remember about being in the finals for the first time?
What I remember about that run is I was so like, I didn't even know what was going on. I mean, I'm 22 years old. You know, I'm trying to take in as much of the information as I possibly can. But more importantly, I just wanted to go out there and not overcomplicate myself with information and just go out and just play free. As a 22-year-old, I feel like that's what you should be doing. You know, I feel like as I got older throughout my career, I could gather more information and still go out and perform. But at 22, it's like, hey, coach, just give me a couple things offensively and defensively, you know, and I'm just going to trust that my IQ and my game and my energy level is going to withstand, the pressure of the postseason. And I was just out there just playing so, I guess, free. You know, no one gave us a chance, obviously, and no one gave me a chance at 22. It was only my 4th year in the NBA. And, we got to the Eastern Conference Finals going against, the big bad Pistons that, was beating up on pretty much everybody in the Eastern Conference. I think they went to like 5 straight Eastern Conference Finals. So it was just about just going out there and just competing and playing hard and just seeing what happens. And I was able to, to have a couple great games in that Eastern Conference Finals appearance, and then go on to playing the dynasty of the Spurs. And that is when you actually needed the information against San Antonio, against Pop, Manu, Tony, Tim, and that crew. And, but it was a great experience, man, just to be able to get to the finals. And that was a time when it was super cool to see the big old Larry O'Brien trophy planted on the court. I remember all those times I used to watch it and seeing that. But it was a great experience for, a 22-year-old kid up until that point in my career.
I remember, that playoff run. That was my rookie year in the NBA. And it felt a little bit like you guys, because you weren't the favorites against the Pistons and you certainly weren't the favorites against the Spurs. It's that feeling of like playing with found money, right? It's house money. It's just, there's a freedom to it. And it's interesting that you say that you kind of didn't really even know what was going on. Does, looking back at that, certainly some of those Warriors Cavs series, you guys were the underdogs. And then you have your year with the Heat and your years with the Heat, I should say, and then your year with the Lakers where you're the favorites. Does the feeling change? Does the mentality change? Does the pressure change? And the reason I bring this up is because I feel like with Boston, there seems to be, a weight. And it's based on past experience. It's based on this season in particular. It's based on the fact that they fucking play in Boston, which their fans, there's an expectation, right? Yeah. It's constant. And as a player, I'm wondering how much you felt that going into a finals where you were the underdog versus the favorite.
Well, I mean, you're right on, JJ. When it comes to that, going into a finals where you're the underdog, you definitely have a different demeanor. You have a different feeling. It's a different weight that's on your shoulders and in your mind and on your back and on your chest or whatever. You definitely feel that. You can feel how less of anticipation or less of people saying that you guys are the favorites, you guys should win, this is your series, whatever the case may be. But I've been on both sides. I've been on sides where, like you said, I've been the favorite and lost, and I've been on the side where I was the underdog and won. So it all comes down to literally who you're matching up against. I mean, listen, let's not get it, messed up or start thinking crazy about, okay, favorites, non-favorites. The best team with the best players and who can withstand runs in the finals, in the postseason, is going to be the team that's going to win, And, like I said, when we was the favorite in one of our series when I was in Miami versus Dallas, we had times where we played exceptionally well, but we did not withstand some of their runs. And they had some of those runs that took us, a long time to get out of, and they controlled. Obviously, playing in the league for so long and me being in the league for so long, those last 2 minutes of every quarter would decide a game. Those last 2 minutes. And people can say, what about the first 10? Obviously, we know 12 minutes in the quarter. We know those first 10s are important. But literally, that last 2 minutes in the third and fourth, those things decide a game and can ultimately decide a series. So, that's, I can feel, I know what Boston is going through, being a favorite and having the weight on their shoulders. And, like you said, the expectation, because they've been there so many times, it's like, okay, how many times you're going to climb this mountain to where now you keep sliding back down it and not actually getting to the top and going back down the other way, So yeah. They're definitely feeling it. But, up until this point, listen, it don't matter who's put in front of you. We're all NBA players, and they're taking care of business right now.
It's so interesting that the end of quarters, start of quarters, finishing games, it's become a real talking point. I've heard a number of coaches talk about it. Joe Mazzulla, probably more so than anyone. And, I brought this up this morning with RJ. You look at game 4, and up until that point, Dallas had won the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter. They had finished that quarter.
Yeah.
Minnesota, of course, finishes the fourth quarter better in game 4. They ended up winning. But there was an opportunity at the end of that second quarter where Karl-Anthony Towns was on the bench with foul trouble, Rudy Gobert was on the bench with foul trouble, and Anthony Edwards was on the bench with foul trouble.
All with three, yep.
And it was a tie game, and it went to halftime as a tie game. Dallas didn't create any sort of separation or margin there. And so when you look at, like in this series, the one guy Joe always brings up is Peyton Pritchard. And look, matchups in the playoffs are different. Peyton didn't play a ton versus Indiana, but he's always been a guy who checks in at the end of the first quarter. He can help create a margin. He's out there for the beginning of the second quarter. He can create a margin. So it's little stuff like that, little nuances of matchups and rotations and lineups, where if you talk about an NBA Finals game, and I want you to co-sign this because I've been saying this for the last 2 weeks, it's hard to win in the NBA. It's hard to win a regular season. It's really hard to win a playoff game. It is fucking extremely difficult. And I know it because I've been there once, and I lived through what 2 games we should have won. We just saw what happened with the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. It is extremely difficult to win a NBA Finals game, to win one NBA Finals game. And so it's this little stuff on the margins where you can pick up some separation.
No, absolutely. And I co-sign that for sure. I mean, listen, I've lived it as well, obviously. But, for me, like, I've been to the point where...
You lived it many more times than I did. You have lived it. I should speak about you in the present because you're still playing.
Like you said, I mean, Jay, I've been where I've won one game. I've been where I've been able to win 4 games to be able to host a trophy. And I've also been on the side that I haven't won 1 game. And I can look at those. I can look at this, one of those instances where I was like, we had a chance. I look at, I believe it was 2017. 2017 game 1 in Golden State. We had an opportunity to win that game 1. I remember one play that still burns me inside is I read Kevin Durant with his right to left crossover, and I'm able to step over and get a charge, and the referees went to go look at it. I still got still got some hurt feelings about that, and they went over and looked at it and called it a block charge. That game didn't go the way it went, as the way we wanted to, but that could change the trajectory of a series. Were we the better team in that series? I don't know. Were we the most talented team in that series? Absolutely not. I mean, Golden State added a generational player in Kevin Durant, but we had zero room for error. That goes along with game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals this year with Indiana. They don't have room for error going against a team like Boston. And when you have an opportunity to close out the game, you're up 3 with the ball, with a timeout, and you turn the ball over 1, and then you still have an opportunity to, possibly foul before the shot goes up or whatever the case may be. MVP of the Eastern Conference Finals, Jaylen Brown makes it, and here we are sitting with Boston in the finals, so.
I want to revisit the fouling up 3 thing, because we did a whole discussion on it, all right? Because it's been a big topic throughout the playoffs. And, on the broadcast, Mike had asked me, what would you do here? I said, I always foul. There are times when you can't foul.
There are.
And I would say there was probably too much separation created by Derek White's back screen. TJ McConnell doesn't switch.
Yeah.
Siakam was not there on the catch. And I asked Joe about it, and Joe said he teaches you run through the guy. So once the ball is in the air, you can basically, I'm not saying not saying tackle, but you run through the guy.
Yeah, you do.
I feel like he wasn't there right on the catch, and he didn't have time to foul. But certainly, you look at the Chris Middleton shot, right? We talked about this.
Yeah, we talked about
the Chris Middleton shot where they're lobbing a pass into Brooke Lopez at the top of the key.
And
Miles Turner had an opportunity,
basket.
Towards the basket, and you have an opportunity to essentially run through the guy.
Yeah.
So there's a difference. I want to talk Celtics. If you were to just sort of break down what you think they do best, like what makes them great beyond just the talent. We all know there's a lot of talented teams, and they have a surplus of talent. What do you think makes them great? What's the best thing they do?
I think they do it with the pass that a lot of people don't really give them credit for. I think their dribble penetration, and once they see the defense start to rotate, they do it with the pass. To be honest, throughout the course of the 48-minute game, they really only have 2 ISO guys, and that's Jayson Tatum and that's Jaylen Brown. Obviously, Peyton Pritchard has the ability to play low ISO ball as well, but they just have 2 ISO guys. The rest of those guys, they move off the pass. They move off the defense shifting. You've loaded up on those 2 great guards, or great wings, and Jayson and Jaylen, and then now that's when their personnel really kicks in. That's when Derek White is playing on a closeout. That's when Drew Holiday is playing on a closeout. That's when Peyton Pritchard is playing on a closeout. Al Horford plays on a closeout. And I think they don't get enough credit for their ball movement when they're driving the baseline or driving the 45, the slot, and getting the defense rotating. And that's their superpowers. Is once that ball get to popping, and they got 5 guys around that perimeter that can all shoot the 3. They all shoot in high 30s. Some of them in the 40s, obviously. But I don't think they get enough credit with how they play with the pass and the body movement that they have.
Yeah, I think that I would describe what you're saying as the Boston Celtics are at their best when they're doing that.
Yeah.
They're at their best when they're getting you in rotation. And they create that in a number of ways. You bring up the ISO stuff, and when they are 5 out, they're spaced. They almost always have 5 shooters on the floor. Now, against the Pacers, Cornette was out there some because Porzingis was not playing. Tillman was out there some. Brissett was out there some. So they did play some lineups where they had 4 shooters.
Yeah.
only 4.
Only four shooters.
But for the most part, in their 8-man rotation, when they're healthy, they got 5 shooters. And so you bring up the 45, and I think that's, a great example of just how they get you in rotation. So this is, let's just say it's Jaylen Brown getting to his right hand, right?
Yep.
Jaylen Brown getting to his right hand.
Yep.
And this low guy has to come over, right? So now you've created a 2-on-1 over here. As this guy comes over, let's say he kicks to the corner.
Yep.
Now, you're at that point, Boston has won the possession.
Yep.
Boston has won the possession because you are now in rotation, right?
Yep.
X guy goes, somebody's flying at the slot guy,
Yep.
and it's just beating you with the pass. And they're all capable of playing out of closeouts, as you mentioned. So I think the spacing is, to me, what starts everything for them offensively.
Yep.
And the way they're able to get 2 on the ball. The play that I love, and this is what I want to sort of talk about with you today, is their, you call it horns 2, or you call it V2?
Horns 2. Yeah, V2.
You call it horns 2. We
Yep.
talked about horns 2 chest earlier, but in one of the other episodes, I want to talk about their horns 2 and how sort of they run it. And we'll just put Al Horford over there and Drew over here. And we'll just say Porzingis is not in the lineup for this. So they run it a bunch of different ways. This is, to me, the best thing they do. This is Jayson Tatum right here.
Correct.
Let's just say he's in that sort of right elbow area. Using Jayson Tatum as a screener, because Derek White's defender is oftentimes one of the weaker guys.
Yep.
This could also be Drew up here. So they use whoever the weakest guy along with JB and JT.
Yep.
And Jayson Tatum as a screener creates so much. So let's say they run their horns 2 flare. Derek White makes the pass. Jayson Tatum sets the flare.
Yep.
There's so many things they get out of this. So obviously Derek White for 3 if they don't switch. Derek White curling. JB hits him. Now all of a sudden you've got shooters. You've got Derek White getting a layup. The other reason I really like this is because they do, I think, a better job than anyone on these rip screens when there is a switch. JT setting this rip screen on Derek White. If they know they're switching, the angle they set this and slip.
Yep.
They get that so much. And again, so everything is built off of spacing.
Yep.
But the way they're able to manipulate matchups, do you think, whether it is Dallas, whether it is Minnesota, do you think, number one, do you think they have the right personnel? Number 2, specifically with this horns 2 flare, we'll talk about the other actions out of horns 2 in a second, but with this horns 2 flare, is switching the right call against the Celtics, or is there a better way to do it?
I think showing any great team a steady diet of the same thing throughout the course of 48 minutes is going to be a death to you. You have to switch it up. You have to change pitches. You can't just show, great players and great teams a steady diet of the same, anything. They will get too comfortable. They will understand it. They will start seeing it, and then they'll expose it. So I think there are times where you can switch that action. But there's times where you have to be extremely physical and body up and try to, force the catch out. You can't let the opposite guy, if it's Jaylen Brown or if it's Al Horford or if it's Drew Holiday, catch the ball right at the elbow. You have to push them off the elbow maybe just a little bit, and a lot of times, a lot of the conversations need to be had before you even get out on the floor. You need to be talking about, okay, listen, this is nut crunching time. These are the sets that they're going to go to because they know they're going to get a good shot out of it. So we got to be ready for it, But, like you said, Joe do a great job of putting those guys in position and understanding who's on the other team when they're guarding them. So you look at, with this matchup with Dallas, obviously you got Kyrie, you got Luka, you got PJ Washington, Derrick Jones, and Gafford or Lively starting at that 5. That position, I'm guessing that Kyrie would be on Derek White. You'll have Derrick Jones and PJ. They'll decide who will be on Jaylen Brown and Tatum. You'll have Luka on Drew Holiday. They're trying to take away his post-ups because that's where Drew is really good. We've seen how many times he big-shouldered Obi Toppin, in late games. So you try to put Siakam, big shoulder,
early in that series.
and ones. He big shouldered those guys. So you want to try to keep a bigger body on Drew. And then you'll have Lively or Gafford on Al Horford or Porzingis if he's available. So they'll probably have whoever Kyrie is guarding initiate that offense that we just drew up and see if they can get the switch. See if they don't switch, can Tatum get a nice clean screen where Derrick White or Drew Holiday gets a layup off that flare, gets a three off the flare, cut to the basket, get a layup. This is the worst thing that can happen, that two guys go with one, where Tatum sets the rip screen, Kyrie is afraid to take the body off Derrick White, and he curls around, and PJ or Derrick Jones goes with them, and now Jayson Tatum steps back for a three by himself. That is the worst thing that can happen. So you have to go in with a definite game plan on, this is what we're going to start with. Let's see if that works. If it doesn't, we'll be ready to make the adjustment.
There's a couple things I want to run back out of this, but for the most part, let's just have two offensive players here.
Yep.
And let's just say this is Jaylen, and let's say you do a good job switching, and this ends up being Jayson Tatum. And whoever this guy initiating the offense, it could be Drew, it could be Derrick, has now cut through to the basket.
Correct.
It's interesting because a lot of teams, when you get to this point and you have this 45, as you said, ISO or slot ISO, a lot of teams, after this guy is cut through, will send him weak side to the dunker spot.
Mm-hmm.
Boston, a lot of times, they don't do it always, but a lot of times, this is a lot of times Derrick, could be Al Horford, a lot of times it's Drew as well.
Mm-hmm.
They actually sit the dunker spot in the strong side.
Mm-hmm.
And if Jayson Tatum is able to get to his strong hand, this guy doesn't ever help. It's actually bizarre. And Tatum can just drive and score. And the other thing it creates, though, is you're essentially having these two weak side defenders then make a decision. How much do I want to help? Right? You're actually, in some ways, you're taking this guy off the floor.
Yeah.
If you put him weak side, you know this. If you put, let's say it's Derrick White weak side, this guy now is the low man.
Yep.
This guy is the X-man. He can play too.
Yep, he can play too. So by Boston putting that guy on a strong block, it's almost essentially like defender. You feel like don't help strong side shooter.
Right.
So you kind of like, do I go help? Do I help up? It's the same kind of trigger that Denver gives you when Joker drives right and you got Aaron Gordon right there. It's like, do I help up or do I stay back? Do I play the cat and mouse game? If I help up, lob to Aaron Gordon, So it's very challenging. We just seen in these conference finals, we've seen many times where Jaylen Brown or Tatum would drive that slot and either X2 or 3 who's down there guarding Drew or Derrick White would help up. Those guys get just an easy layup. Or if they don't, you get a walk-in layup for either one of those guys. So that's pretty smart thinking on Joe and his staff.
Yeah, I like it. I think at least for most of your career and certainly all of my career, I don't remember teams, and this is something new. I think teams are really paying attention, especially with smaller players, putting them in the dunker spot. Because essentially you negate them actually being a defender because they're just small. And by the way,
just small.
By the way, with Dallas, one thing to watch with them, because they played Clippers first round, heavy ISO team.
Yep.
They played against Shea and Jalen Williams in the second round with OKC, heavy ISO team, and now they're playing against Anthony Edwards ISOs.
So they're equipped.
So, but watch what they'll do. Let's say Kyrie is on Derrick White and they didn't get any switch. Mm-hmm. And Derrick White goes down there, Drew goes down there. If Kyrie is the low guy on an ISO, they almost always will move him out. The other defender on that side will say, switch with me. It could be Luka, could be PJ, could be Derrick.
Kick him
they
out.
want to get Kyrie out of there.
They want to kick
so
him
that
out.
He's
keep him
not going
perimeter.
against size. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is the other one I like, and they'll run this. Well, they run a couple other ones, but This is like Horns 2 twist, basically. So I'm going to put the big up here because a lot of times they will run it. And this could be Cornette with the backups. It could be Horford, but I'm going to put KP here.
Yep.
So Derek White will come off JB. JB will then cut through. And sometimes he'll space. Sometimes he just kind of stays in the dunker. And then KP comes and runs into a ball screen. And the thing with KP that's interesting in particular about this series, so now you got Derek White going to his strong hand, one of the best pick and roll ball handlers in terms of efficiency this year, according to Second Spectrum. And you got KP popping. And this is against, by the way, this is against Daniel Gafford. It's against Derek Lively, right?
Yep.
This, to me, is probably the biggest question mark I have about two great defenses. I think Dallas and Minnesota have two great defenses. So, how do you anticipate them dealing with the Porzingis pick and rolls?
You know, that's going to be a big-time challenge. And obviously, personnel-wise, you see who's on the floor. But at the end of the day, if Porzingis is active, then 9 times out of 10, they're going to have 5 shooters out on the floor. So you can't, you know how, you know, in the OKC series, Dallas was allowed to hide Gafford at times and Lively and put him on Josh Giddey, you know, and kind of keep them roaming, you know, not afraid of his pick and pops, not afraid of him being spaced in the corner, so he was able to get away with it to the point where OKC made a change and started, decided to put Josh Giddey off the bench. So that will be the biggest question mark, JJ, on who guards Porzingis. Obviously, I believe it will be Gafford and or Lively, but how do they deal with that Horns twist action? Or how do they deal with just a thumb down or a thumb up action where Porzingis just runs up from the middle of the floor and probably doesn't even set it all the time and gives those guys a right hand where he's popping, and you putting, X5 Lively, Lively, Gafford, in a pickle, in a position where it's like, okay, do I help on the guard or do I allow him to get downhill? So I think what helps in Dallas' case, if that is the case, having Maxi Kleber back. I think that helps a lot. I know he's been out for a while since round 1 versus the Clippers, but it does allow them to now start switching a lot, and I know that's always challenging against Boston because they have so many great ISO players, but I do think there's times in certain matchups where Maxi can switch out on some of the Boston guards and contain them.
Yeah, he's a very valuable defender. At the very least, he can stay in front and use his length, right?
Correct.
At the very least. It's interesting because today I watched a pretty long edit of all of Anthony Edwards' ISOs against the Dallas Mavericks. And it's interesting because you brought up the roaming thing off of Giddey. And to me, for the most part, in these ISOs, they're kind of just ignoring Gobert. And whoever is on Gobert, whether it's Lively, Gafford, Kleber, they are essentially roaming. And they're just essentially banking on the fact that they got multiple guys behind them, right? And they're going to play rotation, X game out of that. You just can't really do that against the Boston Celtics. And there was one clip where, Anthony Edwards had it up top and he was playing in a 5-shooter lineup. It was McDaniels, it was Naz Reid, Karl-Anthony Towns, and Mike Conley, right? He got past his man. Gafford was forced to help. McDaniels gets a slot 3.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's like point of attack defense versus the Celtics ISOs, and then being great in rotation. But again, this is what you said at the beginning. Like, they are so good once they get into the pass game, once they get you into rotation, that's, to me, is when they're at their best. And that's really going to be the biggest issue, I think, against Dallas, is there isn't somebody to roam off of.
No, nobody. There's not one person you can roam off of that that Boston puts out on the floor. They are well equipped. They know exactly where everybody is. To go back on what you just said on the Minnesota piece, there's times offensively with Minnesota when Gobert is on the floor, you don't quite feel like he knows where to be successful when they're roaming off of him, or the team doesn't know. there was a big time play in Game 4. Karl Anthony Towns was at the 4, and essentially Kyle Anderson was playing the 5. And there was a play where Anthony Edwards was isoed on the right wing, and no one was guarding Kyle Anderson. And Kyle Anderson, we know, is one of the smartest guys in the NBA. He used what they were doing against him to the benefit for Cat, and was able to set a flare screen opposite the ball onto Kyrie and got Cat a big-time 3. I mean, up until that point, I think Cat made 1 before that, but up until that point, through the first 3 games and 3 quarters, Cat had 0 airspace. But going back to what I'm saying, Kyle Anderson just used his brain and saying, okay, yes, you guys are going to shit on me because I am not a spacer, and me playing the dunker doesn't benefit because I'm not super athletic. I can't catch lobs. But you know what? I know there's a guy not guarding me, so I know that if I'm setting a screen on someone, then my guy can help him. And that was a big time shot. They went up 6, forced Dallas to call a timeout. So, you have to be able to play the game within the game.
We want to celebrate, and I think we're being very positive with the Celtics right now. We're not trying to make it seem like they're unguardable.
I know Laker Nation is going for the Dallas Laker Mavericks.
Yeah. Look, but I do want to make a point, and I don't think Minnesota has been very clean with their spacing. Your point about Gobert is a valid point. I don't think they're clean with even simple stuff like a slot ISO. I'm watching this stuff. A slot ISO, you typically have the ball side player all the way in the corner. A top ISO, or even just a shade left or right of the top, you typically have the next man spaced to the 4-point line 45 degrees. Their spacing is very dense. Their spacing is very condensed. Sometimes the guy doesn't get all the way to the corner. Sometimes the next man is like 8 feet away when he's got the space to move. And so, yeah, you're like, oh, Anthony Edwards, he turned the ball over. I think it was Game 2 where he just didn't drive the basketball. And you're like, where's he supposed to go?
Yeah, there's 8 guys. There's 8 guys and 16 eyes right there. Yeah.
And my curiosity about the way Dallas has played against these ISOs, because again, Boston, I want to say, was the 4th most frequent ISO team in the regular season. JB, Tatum, large part of that, to your point. They have been, even against shooters, whether it's Mike Conley, Jaden McDaniels, Isaiah Joe at times, Case and Wallace at times, even against shooters, they've been more than willing. I don't want to call it overhelp, but overshow help position against isolation.
Yeah.
Like they are, and then just rely on the closeout. And I don't know if they do that against Boston, but that's something that I'm very curious about in terms of how they have their shifts against isolation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because we know that on any given day, any given evening, that Boston can ring off 25 made threes, and that is very frustrating for a defense, where, as a player, we go into a game and you're like, okay, we want to be heavy shift. We want to create no lanes for these 2 guys, but we're giving up 60 attempts from the 3-point line, in which case they can make 25 of them. So I have a lot of confidence, that Jay Kidd and his staff, being able to work with those guys for some years, that they will have a game plan that's similar to what they've been doing, obviously, because when you get to this point of the postseason, you can't just tear everything up and throw it away and say, oh, we got a new thing for them. No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You've built these habits all throughout the year and across the postseason, but they will have some things that will be different from what they've done, versus Minnesota, versus OKC, versus the Clippers, once they face Boston, because it's a different beast. It's a different monster. We know that.
Yeah, and the other thing I would just say is whether it's PJ Washington, whether it's Derrick Jones Jr., those two matchups against JB and Jayson Tatum. Look, those guys can stay in front at times.
Yeah,
It's not like they're getting beat every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say Kyrie's engagement level defensively, let's say there is a switch on an ISO, and you've got PJ Washington with length, Derrick Jones Jr. with length in a shift, that stuff matters. Like they are equipped. They are equipped to defend this Boston team. I believe that.
I agree.
But this Boston team is a different animal offensively than anything they've faced so far, and it's because of the spacing and the shooting.
Yeah,
and I think that's fair.
Absolutely. And when it comes down to being shifted, the worst thing you can do is have guys out on the floor that's in a two-way stunt. And meaning when I say that is, okay, if we want to be shifted, you need to be in to start. So when you're already in and you're showing length, you're showing hands, once that pass happened, it's just a one-way stunt. You've already at the ball, you're at the level, and I'm getting out. But, sometimes, guys' pride versus certain teams and versus JB and Jayson Tatum, you're like, okay, this is my matchup. And then a drive happens, and now you're doing a two-way stunt. You're going from being bodied up to now trying to stop the ball and then try to get back out. It's too late. So it's either one or the other. Either you're gonna live with giving up drives to Boston and not helping on the threes, or you're gonna be in to start, ready to fire out and getting contests and getting high hands. And listen, you're gonna have to fly around. Because one thing I've learned in the NBA, listen, we can write it, we can script it, but sometimes you just got to figure that shit out. Let's just figure it out. There's going to be times where you absolutely fucked up that possession because either a communication breakdown or you heard switch in your head, but it was something else it was something else called, and you still need to get a stop. Sometimes you just got to figure it out. So, just being engaged throughout the course of 48 minutes, 24 seconds on that shot clock, because Boston's going to make you work. Boston's going to make you work.
I don't think there's a best way. I don't think there's a good way to guard Luka Doncic in a pick and roll. And, you brought up mixing it up against great players. And for the most part, Minnesota has. I think Game 3 was probably the most egregious example of mixing it up. In all the pick and rolls, over 20% of the pick and rolls, they switched. Over 20% of the pick and rolls, they were in drop. Over 20% of the pick and rolls, they blitzed. Luka, by the way, 14 times in his career that's happened, where over 20% has seen, all three coverages has seen over 20%. If you had to guess, I've not shared the numbers with you. If you had to guess, and they're very consistent regular season to playoffs, what do you think is the most effective defense? And this is points per chance. So this is like legitimately it doesn't matter who scores. Do the Mavs score? It doesn't matter if Luka scores. Points per chance. What do you think is the most effective by the numbers?
By the numbers?
Guarding Luka and pick and roll.
By the numbers, I would say blitz. Yeah, I would say blitz. And the reason I say blitz is because I look at the other two, and it's not switching. Because they don't run many small pick and rolls. They run a lot of 1-5 pick and rolls, when it comes to, because the 5 is, usually not as mobile or whatever, not as agile. So they try to bring the 5 up, and they have those 2 lob threats, which Luka loves. So I know that switching is not it. We saw that at the end of Game 2 in the Western Conference Finals. And then dropping pick and rolls, he's just too big. Luka's too big at his frame and his size. You drop his pick and roll, he gets the hostage, puts you in jail, and now you're asking the big to make the decisions on, should I help up? Should I give ground? Soon as you help up, lob to Gafford, Lively, or corner kick pass to the three-pointer. So I'm guessing, I just did process of elimination, JJ. I will say blitz and place the onus on the 5-man in the short roll to make a play. And let's see if Lively and Gafford and, Dwight Powell played a little bit because of, obviously, Lively's injury. in game 4 or game 3. So I would say that you live with those chances.
Okay, so you are correct. By the numbers. And actually, these numbers are remarkably consistent. Regular season playoffs versus drop coverage, points per chance, they get right around 1.10, so 110 points per 100. Versus switch, the worst option. You were correct on that as well. Right in between 112 per 100 in the playoffs and 115 versus a switch per 100 in the regular season. In the regular season versus a blitz, and he was the most blitz player in the NBA, 0.97, so 97 points per 100 per chance against a blitz. And it gets even worse in the playoffs, 0.67, and he is the most blitz player in the playoffs. It's interesting thinking about Drew specifically and his size. I think there's a similarity with Lou Dort that it's not like you're going to have to blitz all the time. Lou, the way Lou got into the basketball and fought over screens and used his strength and size, it kind of matched Luka in some ways.
Yeah.
Drew's a smaller player, but he has those same physical qualities. So I don't think it's going to be like necessary where you got to blitz Luka all the time. I'm sure at times they'll mix it up.
Yep.
Boston, by the way, I want to say, I don't have the exact number, I want to say they blitzed around 3% of all pick and rolls this year. They are not a blitz team.
No, they're a heavy switch team.
Yeah. And two, and some of that, if it's with the 5, the X5,
Yep.
You got Derek White and Drew Holiday. You trust those guys.
Yep.
Your point, though, I think is the most important thing to me is Luka as a decision maker is one of the best in the game. Even against a blitz, he can make the pass that leads to a shot. I mean, there was one play, he comes off a blitz to his right hand in the high slot and makes a wraparound baseball pass on time, on target to the opposite corner.
Yep.
Like, there's 5 guys in the world that can make that pass.
Yep.
But by taking the ball out of his hands, that's not going to be every time you blitz. That he's going to have the pass that leads to a shot. You are creating a decision for someone else to make. And I think that's the important point.
That's an important thing. And I believe that just watching that end of the game, I hate to keep harping on Rudy, but, them switching that pick and roll at the end of game 2, I would have been okay with the switch, but I wouldn't have been okay with not now firing to get the ball out of his hand.
Switch to blitz.
Switch to blitz. Kind of, because, you get the switch, and when Luka sees the big on him, his eyes get like this. So now Luka backs up. He backs up because he's now, okay, I'm about to get into my shit. But as soon as he was about to get into his shit, I would have sent another defender right away. Not only does it make, a second guess to Luka, obviously he's seen everything, but it takes time off the clock. And then ultimately what we all care about is getting the ball in somebody else's hands. I mean, obviously if it's Kyrie, the next guy, he's just as dangerous as well. But, you take your chance when it comes to Luka versus 5 or the rest of the field versus the rest of the field.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch that play again, after the screen was set, I think it was Lively. They cut down essentially the middle of the paint. Jaden McDaniels went with them, and there was a split second where I was like, yo, he's going to go double. He's going to go double. And he didn't do it. When we played Kawhi in 19, when he was on the Raptors and I was on the Sixers, by like game 3 or 4, we were like, this guy, he's killing single coverage.
Yeah.
And so rather than like, me showing or James, it's like, let's just switch it. And then as the guy cuts through, just go with him for a second and then switch to blitz. I'm not saying we had a great success with that, but at least it was something we could do. I think at the end of the game, that's something that you have to have in your bag. That is absolutely something you have to have in your bag. I'm like, if Luka's ISO'd at the top of the key against anybody in the world, this is not a knock on Gobert, Luka's going to get a good shot off.
Absolutely.
he's going to get a makeable shot off.
Absolutely. Oh, I got another question for you, JJ, regarding Luka. I have an idea. So I was watching the game. This is game 4 that just happened. Minnesota's up 6, right? Luka is bringing it in transition. And obviously he hits the 4-point play. Was it a foul? Okay, I don't know. I'm not gonna get involved in that. How do you feel about also fouling up 6 to keep it a 2-possession game? I was sitting here watching the game, and I'm like, if I'm up 6 and they make a 3, it becomes a 1-possession game. But if I foul while he's bringing the ball up and they go to the line, he makes 2, it's still a 2-possession game.
Well, Joe Mazzulla did that in game 1 in overtime. I don't know if you caught it.
I don't think I caught it.
Okay. So, and I can't even remember. I think it was TJ McConnell. He fouled somebody. Maybe it was Ty, but they're up 6 in OT. They're bringing the ball
Joe
to the
Mazzulla
right
guy's
side,
a fucking genius, huh?
Joe Mazzulla fouled and sent them to the free throw line.
No,
The more I talk to you, it was the first time I'm like, oh, foul up 6. I like that.
The more I talk to you, the more and more I like this Joe guy. Because I'm starting to get some,
You got to think outside the box a little bit.
You absolutely. And I see why he sits over there and he says absolutely nothing and he's calm as fuck. He only gets a little like when like he knows they're not playing the right way offensively. It's never defensively. It's never because of the 3-point attempts. It's never ever if a team makes a run. He's calm. It's only when they don't play the game the right way that he gets a little angry. But I don't know how I missed that. Maybe I was just like, they was up 6 and I probably just stopped watching the game at that point. But I saw it. I was like, Luka's bringing the ball up. And I'm like, get the ball out of his hands or just fucking foul him. He's shooting 75% from the free throw line anyways. He might miss one. The funny thing is, he made the 3 but missed the free throw. So they were still at 103-100.
Last point I want to make on the Blitz, and then we'll wrap, is just Dallas. It's interesting against the Blitz. We have talked a lot, and I think specifically about when you blitz Steph Curry or you blitz Jamal Murray versus Jokic, and you get the ball to the middle of the floor, you've created the 4-on-3, and you get the weak side corner cut for the lob. Dallas really doesn't do that a lot. What they want the corner 3. So Luka's blitzes are one of the ways they create corner 3s. Corner 3s are the best shot in basketball in terms of behind the arc, right? So you can create spot corner 3s. That's a good shot analytically. And how they do that, when they get the ball to Lively, when they get the ball to Gafford in the middle, they don't cut against that 2-on-1.
They do not.
And so, I don't know that they blitz, but the other point is what Luka does, and like Derrick Jones Jr. got one, I think it was in game 2 from the right corner. Luka, against a drop, if you're in a shift against him out of the corner, he'll go up to shoot, late pass.
Late pass.
Right? That Dallas, because this is going to be there's going to be a math game to this. Don't tease me on this, please. Don't tease me on this. It's a real thing. Can Dallas create enough 3s against Boston? That's going to be important. And one of the ways they create 3s is against the blitz by getting the ball to the corner.
And I think that's why Boston defends the way they defend, to take away the 3. And it's going to be interesting to see. Like you said, it's going to be. And you would think that, with Dallas' ability to have the athleticism of P.J. Washington and especially Derrick Jones, that they would get a little bit more corner cuts for lobs and dunks. Maybe not as lobs because, you don't want Gafford or Lively throwing lobs, but they can make bounce passes and they can make some passes on time on target. But they want to create and generate 3s. That's what our league is about. So that, that's a great point, JJ, and the fact that that's what we're going to have to see. How will Dallas create enough 3-point shots according to how Boston defends throughout the course of the season?
I lied. I have one more question and one more comment. No, it's only because Jason hit me today and he's like, hey, I want you to ask LeBron what is his favorite thing about X player? You know, he's like, I'm always like, what's my favorite thing about Luka? And he named some random thing that Luka did, which is like, it happens once a game. Like, whatever. No, I'm just kidding, Jason. The one guy we haven't talked about, by the way, is Kyrie Irving. And to me, he's like the ultimate sort of X factor in all of this. Because when he has it going, it takes Dallas to a whole nother level.
Yep.
And it also offsets Luka, and we've seen it in the playoffs. It offsets Luka not being at his best. It offsets a bad shooting performance. It offsets a great defensive performance against him.
Yep.
If Kyrie has it going.
Yep.
So with Kyrie, what is your favorite thing about Kyrie, the basketball player?
Listen, I will call Kyrie the wizard all the time. Like, all the time. Like, there was nothing on the basketball floor that Kyrie couldn't do. And sitting here watching it, you know, I'm playing like so fucking happy and so proud and to watch him and continue his growth and whatever the case may be. And at the same time, I'm so fucking mad at the same time that I am not his running mate anymore. So I'm like, I just remember those times. And back to what you were saying, JJ, like to have a guy like Kyrie Irving as the ultimate wild card, that's like having it's like having a draw four in your hand every time someone deals you cards in Uno. Like every single time, because he has the ability to, like you said, I saw in game one, Western Conference Finals, game one. You know, I think up until that point, I don't know the stat because I'm not writing down the stats and I don't call the games like you guys, but I think Kyrie was only averaging like 8 points in the first half, like in the second round of the playoffs. You know, he was getting his 16 to 20 in the second half, but in the first half of games, you know, it was like 6 to 8. Yeah, I don't know the exact number. It was 6 to 8. Yeah. And you're like, okay, you know you're gonna have Kyrie in the fourth, but I need you sometimes in the first half too, brother. But like what he did in game one, it was like at the Western Conference Finals, you was like, that was like, oh shit, Dallas may be able to not only win the Western Conference Finals, they might be able to win the whole thing because of that wild card. I have so many words to praise Kyrie that I end up with absolutely none because he's the most gifted player the NBA has ever seen. He has the best gifts I've ever seen of any NBA player. I've never seen a guy in my NBA life that feels better at times shooting with his offhand than he does with his primary hand. If Kyrie's off in a game with his right hand, he will literally go exclusively to his left hand. I've never seen nothing like that. The shot that he made versus Denver towards the end of the regular season on Joker, it's one of the most ridiculous shots I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
He's just that special.
I said this in the first round closeout game. I think it was the closeout game. He had PJ ISO'd right in front of the Dallas bench.
Oh my goodness.
And he went to his dribble package and he hit him with the left to right and then did the delay gather with his footwork to create the separation. Shot it. Ball goes in. He doesn't see it go in. He kind of just reacts to his teammates and the crowd. I'm not sure PJ Tucker could have played better defense. And I made the comment on air, and I think I mean this. I'm not sure there's ever been a player that's more aesthetically pleasing when he has it going. Like his game is beautiful.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? He always talks about he's basketball players are artists. He's an artist out on the court. And I got to be honest, like it's not invalid. I'm sometimes like, yeah, this This guy's an artist. You
No,
called him a
doesn't-
wizard, I'll call him an artist.
No,
It's there.
absolutely. And by the way, we're both saying the exact same thing, and he's remarkable.
Yeah. Always good catching up. Appreciate it.
Always. All right. All right.
That shot from JJ. What the hell?
Yeah.
What did he say? Fuck me for? What am I?
Yeah. What did he say? Fuck me for?
What's your favorite thing about Luka? You're such a Luka homer. That's all it comes down to.
Oh no shit! Really? What gave that away?
Hey guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching Mind the Game podcast. If you like it, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you.